Hey everyone, Rick here, and folks, welcome back to another unit review for Battlefields of Mana, and this is it. This is our last Marauder review, and then we're going to move on to Mercenaries, and folks, there are a lot of mercenary units and single figures, but let's focus on the Lord himself, the Marauder Overlord. Now, this is a unique figure. And also, we're also going to talk about the Marauder Acolyte, which is this wizard-looking figure over here. So we have Marauder Overlord on foot or on horseback. We have a Marauder Acolyte on foot. You can also have a Marauder Acolyte on horseback, just like warlords and sorcerers in the other armies, Lunar Knights, Regal Guard. They act very similar. They just have separate combat profiles. So, just like warlords and sorcerers, these single figures, unlike Marauder sergeants, unlike unit commanders, they don't have to be attached to a unit during deployment. They can absolutely be on their own, and during the course of the game, they can go around and do their own thing. And they can come and go as they please, attach themselves to units, detach themselves from units. And in fact, I wanted to show exactly how that might look because I still have my unit of Marauder Cav handy. So let's say this Marauder Overlord was on foot and then he wants to go join this unit of Marauder Cav. He just has to get into base contact and then replace one of the figures in the front rank with the Marauder Overlord, and then that's how it'll look. You'll put the other guy in the back rank. Any position doesn't matter unless they eventually get flanked or something. Then you'll want to slide them over to maximize amount of figures in contact, but otherwise that's how that might look. And of course, if you have you could also have a unit commander in this unit too and stick them in there, and then you'll have, two guys in the back rank then. So it ends up looking really cool the more guys you add to a unit. Now, if you somehow had another single figure you wanted to add to this unit, you never move the banner bearer, so then other single figures would then go in the next rank back. But anyway, so that is a Marauder Overlord on horseback. Again, he can leave and stay on horseback, or he can leave and run around on foot. It doesn't necessarily matter. It may depend on your own preference. You can almost think of it like he probably has a squire or something with him who always has his horse, so he can get on and off his horse at will. But anyway, so a Marauder Overlord, let's look at these stats. 4 dice in melee, 2 dice in range. He has a combat strength of +1, so it doesn't matter melee or range. His dice are going to get +1 to a max of 6. Armor's a 3, so only 4s or better are going to hit him. His defense, so every die he rolls in defense, is all +1, again to a max of 6. And he has a parry save, so any dice that he rolls in defense that don't negate an attack die, he can roll those again, and on 6s at that point, he will block the hit. He has a range of 12. He has a movement of 4 or 6 if he's mounted. So again, that's why he has different poses, different movement values for those poses. Initiative of +5. So that gives him 5. You add 5 to the result of the die roll when you're rolling off for initiative. Now he has a health of 10. So you would have a 10-sided die. Typically, that's what I do next to him to, keep track of how many wounds he has. This is a Marauder die, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But we want to talk about his abilities. Overlord. That combines... Now, there's 2 ways to play Marauders. You can forego having a Marauder Acolyte, which is basically a sorcerer. And the Marauder Overlord can also cast magic. So Overlord combines the Warlord, Warcry, and magic special abilities all into one. So Warlord, of course, means that all units within 6 inches, including the unit he's in, if he's in one, all get the benefit of his initiative bonus. And never panic. Even if they're reduced to just their banner bearer, they still do not panic if they're within 6 inches of him. Then the Warcry ability, if you recall that, you'll roll a 6-sided die, and on a 3 or better, every unit within 6 inches of him, besides himself and an Acolyte if there is one, all get a Warcry die. It's a D6 die you stick with the unit, and a unit can have as many Warcry dice as they want, and you can Warcry once a turn, but you can Warcry every turn, and you should Warcry every turn. Roll a D6, 3 or better. Every unit within 6 gets a Warcry die that can be used as an additional attack die, an additional defense die, or even another initiative die. So you'd be rolling 2d6 for initiative plus the initiative bonus. No line of sight is required for either of those things, either using his initiative or getting Warcry dice. And the Warcry can happen during any part of the turn: movement, magic, shooting, close combat. So whenever in the turn he wants to Warcry, he can, every turn. And then the magic. So this is where we introduced the Acolyte here, because having him be the warlord and sorcerer made him a super target. So you can either keep it as intended, the Marauder Overlord can also cast magic, or you can split him up. He no longer gets to do magic. He will still get his other abilities, just get rid of his range and, the range stat. And then include a Marauder Acolyte, which has the exact same profile as a sorcerer, except they both will have this Marauder ability. Of course, they both will have the cavalry ability. So if they are on their mounted pose, they have cavalry, which means a +1 to the initiative roll if they are facing off against non-polearm infantry and they themselves are mounted. So if they're mounted and their opponent's mounted, they don't get the cavalry bonus. If they're mounted and their opponent's a polearm, like a spear or a halberd, they don't get the cavalry bonus. But if they're facing axemen or bowmen or swordsmen, they will get that extra cavalry bonus of +1 to the initiative, becomes a +5 to a +6. And then the Marauder Acolyte, as well as the Marauder Overlord, they always get that Marauder ability. Every unit in the Marauder army gets the Marauder ability, which is a D10. You roll this simultaneously with your attack dice, and if the result is a 7 or more, that's 1 automatic extra wound that cannot be defended. Unblockable wound if you roll a 7 or better on this die. Now that's symbolic because, when you're rolling defense dice, typically they're all D6s, and even if you had a +1 to defense or whatever, you can never exceed a 6. So even if you were rolling to defend against it, you'd never be able to get a 7 or better on a D6 anyway. So that's why if you roll a 7 or better on this Marauder die, that's 1 unblockable wound. And no, the defender does not get any extra defense dice to compensate for this extra D10. This is just a little something special Marauders get because they're, bandits and thieves, and they're underhanded and sneaky, and, that's just a little extra something that they get. So that is it. So again, the Marauder Overlord, that Overlord ability gives him the ability to use magic, but if so, you don't get the Acolyte. And then he is both powerful in melee and range, but he becomes quite a target. So you can forego the ability for him to cast magic, get rid of the range, get rid of the 2 attack dice in range, and include a Marauder Acolyte in your army instead. So that is it. That completes our review of all Marauder units now. So we're moving on to Mercenaries next. I am so excited. They are freaking amazing. Marauder units, of course, besides the Overlord and the Acolyte, all Marauder units were just like Lunar Knights, Regal Guard. You can have up to 4 of each in your army. But these Mercenaries we're going to talk about next is a single unit. Only one you can add to your army. And we'll talk about that when we get there. So thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it. And until next time.